Have you heard from Bobby at all?
I haven't. Ever since he's been on this trip,
He was only supposed to go for like a day, I thought.
It wasn't just a hiking trip.
I thought
like
it was
a day trip.
I'm actually kind of shocked he went hiking because, his hair kind of hits trees and stuff like that.
I mean, talking about his hair, those hair products, I mean, he's kept him in business, even through Corona.
I know.
He's going to be fine. Bobby?
Hey, ladies, I've been hiking all day, social distancing. There's this real cool guy on the trail who's been following all the time. We got some selfies
Wait, what?
and everything.
Wait, what? Bobby? Did you say a guy was following you?
Yeah, some guy. He's nice enough. Oh, wait, he's pulling something out of his bag for me. Hold on a second.
Bobby?
But oh, shit, they got him.
I hope they can save his hair.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Free Rotation podcast. This is a special kind of episode. It's a ladies episode. Hey, girl.
Yeah, we never found Bobby on that hiking trail.
Yeah, and we've systematically gotten rid of every man that's ever been on this podcast.
I mean, we found hairspray, we found condoms, we found a lot of beer and whiskey. And we found denim.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But no Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby's just gone. But for real, though, we got coronavirus. That's what's going around. So
we don't have
the coronavirus. I'm sorry. We don't have it. The United States has the coronavirus.
The Rona.
The Rona is lurking. So a lot of us have been social distancing. So just like most of our...
social distance from us for about a year now. Going on 2 years.
I was just about to make a joke that some of us social distance so hard we haven't seen them in a year and a half. But... So, we're trying to keep safe. So everybody out there, just keep safe. Make sure everything's good. So we're going to have an uplifting, positive episode. We're going to talk about more murders.
Oh, rainbows.
The rainbow murders. Okay, so it's actually funny that it's just me and you because it's all lady murders.
Yeah.
So it'll be me and you talking about women getting murdered.
Yeah, I was going to say, Becky, these aren't women murderers. These are women getting murdered.
I'm so sorry. Hey, things work out the way it's going to work. So I ended up actually covering two different murders, or two different unsolved murders. Let me put it that way.
You did the two murders?
Yes, it is a tale of two murders.
Oh.
Or my. Anyways, So the first one I'm going to talk about, and they're actually kind of similar. When we start going through the notes a little bit, it's kind of just the weirdness of each one. So the first one I'm going to cover is the one dubbed the Rainbow Murders. And I was actually interested in doing this unsolved case due to a book I recently read called The Third Rainbow Girl. And it's pretty good going between the past during the time of the murders, the investigation, and the trials, along with a look at the author's perspective during her time residing in Pocahontas County, where the murders actually happened. I highly recommend it if you like true crime, but it is very feminist-oriented if you have a problem with that. And, there's people out there who don't like the feminisms and stuff like that, so...
I saw a good quote that said it's not feminist versus sexist, it's people versus sexist.
Yeah.
So being feminist is actually just appreciating human rights.
Right. I think they just get a bad connotation because there's always some extreme minority group.
The feminazis.
Yeah, the feminazis.
Yeah.
So it's a really good book. I highly recommend it if you want to know more about this murder. But I'm going to cover basically So on June 25th, 1980, a college student noticed two people lying on the ground after exiting his vehicle at the entrance of Droop Mountain in Pocahontas County.
In West Virginia.
It's in West Virginia.
But first we need to address your note saying two peoples.
I did write two peoples. They noticed two peoples. Okay, I type really fast.
The Rona has affected your grammar.
It really has. At first, he thought the pair were, canoodling. It's the,
What's canoodling?
It's the sex
Are they
times.
canoeing with a noodle?
Oh my God, it's one of those. This is what it's going to be? You're like, what's canoodling? What is the sex? That is what we're going to talk about. Has nothing to do with it and what's happening in this story, by the way. As he got closer to the pair, though, he realized that they were actually bodies of two deceased, unidentified females. It was pretty clear pretty fast that the pair were not locals, as Pocahontas County is sort of a small town and everyone kind of knows everybody. If you've ever been to any sort of mountain town in any state that has mountains, you know that you can tell the tourists versus, or people you just don't know. They were immediately unable to identify these people as anybody who was local. During the time of the murders, there were crowds of people heading to the, and I'm going to screw this word up, Monongahela National Forest for what was called the Rainbow Gathering, which was a counterculture peace festival. So information regarding the pair of women were disseminated throughout the gathering. So that's sort of why they also thought that he was unidentified locals, is because of the hitchhikers that were coming through Pocahontas County at that point. The pair would be later identified as Vicky Durian, who was 26, and Nancy Santamero, 19, who were two hitchhikers who were actually traveling to the Rainbow Gathering. The two were shot at close range, leaving their bodies in a remote clearing, and there were no signs of sexual assault. So the thing that was very clear initially is that their clothes were still on. It looks like that they were just literally assassinated. You know when they talk about like cold killing, you know what I'm talking about when they say that they're just shot at close range? It was like
executioner style.
That's what it is, executioner style. So it was very strange for what was going on, that these were just women who had just randomly been shot. Mm-hmm. So later during the investigation, it would be noted that a third woman, subsequently called the Third Rainbow Girl, had been traveling with the pair up until near the time of their murders. Liz Jondro was another young woman traveling to the Rainbow Gathering and was actually hitchhiking with the pair up until the day before the murders. During that time, she had had an uneasy feeling and parted ways with the two at a Virginia truck stop after finding out that her father was getting married the next weekend. So initially, nobody knew who this woman was. They just knew that there had been a third girl identified with these two when witnesses had seen them. So they were looking for her, thinking maybe she had gone missing. But they were able to find her fairly later in the investigation. And she admitted that, listen, I left, and it was my dad's.
I'm telling you, intuition is sometimes it might be spot on. And sometimes you may not know what you avoided. But if your intuition says, hey, I got a feeling.
Well, she thought it was a sign that she had called her brother, which I thought it was strange that they didn't. She had no idea her dad was getting married, but I guess for the time, a lot of women were traveling all over the country, hitchhiking back and forth, and you weren't really in communication like you are now.
Maybe they decided to just run down to the JP and we're doing it next weekend.
Right. So she kind of took it as a sign, like, okay, maybe it's time for me to go. If I'm feeling some type of way about what's going on, and this is a good reason to get out of it now, she was just like, I'm out. So, and the thing is, these girls had actually stayed with family members of each of these girls prior to hitchhiking to the Rainbow Gathering. So the family was aware of where these girls were going. It wasn't like these were just two random girls who had bad relationships with their families. These were actually women who were just hitchhiking to go to this Rainbow Gathering. Free-spirited kind of stuff. So the investigation actually zeroed in on locals as the perpetrators. The reason being was that the clearing where the bodies were located wasn't exactly an easy place to find at all. Like, you had to actually travel through Droop Mountain Park to get to this clearing, or it was near the clearing, but it was kind of off a main road, which was off another road. So it wasn't like somebody who was a tourist could just travel that way.
It was somebody who couldn't use a mini map and ended up somewhere they, found
there was
by accident.
Yeah, there's no fog of war in real life, Angie.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, Angie just learned how to use a mini map in video games.
Don't accuse me of that.
I'm not accusing you. I witnessed it yesterday.
You said I learned how to use it.
Oh, that's true. I did assume that you had learned how to use it.
No, it's still confusing as hell.
Okay. So during that time, the case would actually go cold until about 1982, when a local farmer, Jacob Beard, who was 36 at the time, fell under suspicion and after placing several anonymous calls to the Durian's family. The first call reported was right after an anniversary piece about the murders had come out, and he became consumed with thoughts of the murders. Now, this is what he said during his interview. The first call the family received involved the individual apologizing for Vicky's death, where he had lived. So it was kind of strange. Like, it's been like a couple of years now. I'm just going to call this person that I don't know and be like, hey, sorry, your daughter died where I lived. Bye. And that was it. He didn't even leave a name or anything. The next call, which had been tapped by law enforcement after the first call had occurred, that individual, who was later identified as Beard, referred to the investigators as small town and not very smart, and urged the family to get the FBI involved in the investigation. So it was the first lead in probably, 2 years that they had regarding who this person could have been who murdered it. There was no evidence on the scene, and there was no real eyewitness statements toward the beginning of the investigation that didn't involve the women already being alive. So this was their first big lead that they had, on top of the fact that this was a guy who was a local living in Pocahontas County where the murders happened. Beard was interviewed several times, with his first story being that he only called Vicky's family to express condolences, but he didn't know anything else about what had occurred. Very little evidence was actually recovered on scene, like I said, and along with no witness statements to really push the matter, it wasn't until 1983 or 1984 that the case had what was like essentially a quote-unquote crack in it. Throughout the next decade, the police would do what I would call, in the nicest way possible, very shady police work. Interviews involving other individuals where initially they denied having any knowledge of the murders would suddenly spring up with some sort of memory or witness statement after a few minutes with certain law enforcement individuals.
Okay, let's reenact.
Okay.
I know you know something.
I don't know anything.
Doesn't matter. We're charging you with first-degree murder, and we've got plenty of evidence we could plan on from you.
Well, how do you have any evidence I wasn't there?
Does that jog your memory?
And then there's probably some physical violence going on in between the two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do you
see something?
Yeah.
You see something now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's like how you sit in a room for a couple hours with somebody and they keep saying, we have evidence. We know what you did. Why don't you tell us what you did?
I'm pretty sure it was, you just drank out of that cup. There's your fingerprints. Be a shame if somebody found them at the scene.
Yeah.
Did you see something?
And you have to remember, a lot of these individuals, and the book goes into a little more detail about each individual who was interviewed. They're not college educated, smarty pant kind of people. These are just very homegrown, run of the mill farmers and workers who lived in that area. So
I just learned something though.
What?
We got to work on your recreational things.
I don't know how to recreate an interrogation
Let's
scene.
try it again. Okay. We've got evidence that can put you at the scene.
What kind of evidence?
Well, I got your fingerprints off that cup, but it's easy to run them down to the scene.
But I wasn't there.
Your family? Maybe your wife did it. Maybe your kids did it.
Wait, why would
It'd be a shame if somebody took them.
Wait, so what you're...
Did you see something?
Well, now that you mention
Did
it...
you say Jacob Beard did it?
Now
he was there, wasn't he?
You know what? Now that I think about it, he was there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he had blood on him too, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we thought. Good. You're a good citizen.
Yeah, thank you for not charging me. Oh, wait, I still get charged later.
Yeah. Because you saw something and said nothing, bitch.
Well, that's what kind of... To me, that's a big part of the book if you read it. And I was like, oh, man, this is really where this is where it really gets bad. Because you can't expect people to not want to lie or say... They think that they're getting out of it and getting away from whatever you're trying to accuse them of if they just admit to something that didn't happen. It happens all the time. But in 1992, investigators believed that they finally had a solid case on Beard. Now, let's remember that when they first zeroed in on Beard, this was like 1983. It wasn't until 1982 that they finally had like what they felt was a really good case against Jacob Beard. They charged him and 6 other men with the murders. Now, these were also some of the individuals who were getting interviewed where they admitted like, hey, I was with him that day. I did see him shoot somebody. Yeah, I didn't report it.
So 1992, not 1982.
No.
You said 1982 they had a solid case.
Well, 1992, they finally get a solid case.
Right. My point was you said 82.
Oh, I meant 1992. My bad.
It was a year before the murder, so.
Yeah. No, it was 2 years after the murder and before they identified him that
Yeah.
they had a solid case on this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That is shady, please. We knew you did it back in 82.
It's like a time traveler who was like, I know you did it, so I've already gotten you arrested. Isn't that what Psychopaths, the TV show, the anime is about, where they can read your minds, and if you start thinking about murder, they can already like arrest you for it?
Yeah.
That's kind of scary, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think about murdering people like 6 times a day or more.
That's because you play League of Legends.
No, it's because I drive.
Whatever. 2 of the charges actually implicated Beard as the shooter itself. Like, so what I'm going back to the whole how they got arrested. Many of the men who had been witnesses or had allegedly been there and had been charged stated that, yeah, they were there. They knew that Jacob Beard had shot them, but they just never reported it. So a lot of their charges were about making false statements to law enforcement, all of that stuff. So really everybody was trying to pinpoint Beard as the guy who did it. And I mean, it is a thing people can do in law enforcement where they charge everybody else and say, hey, you lied to me. You're going to go down with this guy if you don't say the truth. But to me, that's just some shady ass police work. It's like, if you don't have enough to really get the guy in the first place, why are you thinking that charging these people who are going to be freaked the fuck out in the first place is going to do anything? You know what I mean?
And why would you think a group of men did it? And maybe this is a sexist statement, but a group of men killed 2 women and no one touched them.
Yeah.
That's not likely.
Well, it goes a little bit more into the book, but what they state is that these men had tried to sexually assault them. When they refused, that's when Jacob Beard shot them. But to me, you would still have some evidence of sexual assault happening.
Yeah, you'd still have some disheveled clothing. You would have evidence that they tried.
Right. So it didn't make a lot of sense.
Plus, let's see, how many men here? Him and 6 other men. That's 7 people and 2 girls.
Yeah.
At a young age. Yeah, they're overpowering them and taking what they want.
Yeah.
There's no, they refused. We're gonna rape you. No. Okay.
Yeah. It was really strange the way they constructed the story. And I'll go into a little bit more of this in a little bit, but to me, the way, and it could just be the way the narrator wrote the book, but to me, this was just a way to pinpoint it on somebody. It's a small town. You want to weed out the bad apple of whoever did it. And how do you solve an unsolved case or with no little evidence? You have to rely on witness statements and you have to rely on getting people to talk. So regardless of whether they're telling the truth or not, this is where we're at. So in 1992, there were 6 men plus Jacob Beard who were charged. However, during a pretrial hearing, one of the men claimed that they were threatened with physical violence, which later led to the charges being dropped. And that was a consistent story with a lot of stuff, is that they were being threatened to say something in order to implicate either somebody else or Jacob Beard. By the end of it, 5 men, including Beard, would be indicted in 1993, dismissing all of the charge. And then later, all of the charges would be dismissed against the other men, except ones against Beard due to those individuals agreeing to testify for the state. So basically, they ended up using that as a tactic to get them to agree to testify. Whether it was the truth or not, you just never know. During the time Beard waited for trial, now this is where the twist comes, and I kind of believe that this is really the killer. Beard's lawyers, learned in 1984 a convicted serial killer named Joseph Paul Franklin, most famously known for shooting and paralyzing hustler publisher Larry Flynt, had claimed he had murdered the pair. Interesting enough, a witness statement early on in the investigation, where they had last seen the girls alive, stated that the girls had, prior to the murders, been placed with an individual who bore a striking resemblance to Franklin with a very similar description of his vehicle. So she was able, and the question is whether these were the girls who ended up getting murdered, if that was Nancy and Vicky, but it was 2 women who were very similarly described as the 2 girls that were murdered. And this guy who law enforcement did investigate, he looked almost exactly like the girl that had the witness had described, and his car was very much similar to the car that had been described.
Well, and she wouldn't have even known she was describing him.
Right.
She was just describing a dude who ends up looking exactly like the dude who says, hey, I murdered those girls. Ha,
yeah.
ha.
And here's the thing that is, if you look at Joseph Paul Franklin's murder, he was an extreme racist, and he hated loose women.
Hippies. He hated
yes.
hippies.
And he killed people executioner style. He never assaulted women. He didn't really assault women. He didn't do it.
No, because he thought he was doing the Lord's work.
He did. He thought he was assassinating these people. Like, I mean, he ran up on this girl and a guy who were just jogging. It was a black man and a white woman. Shot the black guy, shot the white woman. The white woman lived and just left. That was it. I mean, it's almost kind of eerily similar to how these girls were murdered.
Yeah.
And so you get 2 girls who probably are, in his mind, thinking they're loose, that they're free-spirited, that they're not following the Lord's work.
They're going to the rainbow gathering, which they probably told him, we're going to the rainbow gathering, which in his mind was probably like Woodstock.
Yeah, which is very counterculture. And if you have kind of the Nazi fascist thought in your brain, you're thinking...
And if they were feminist, that would have sent him over the edge.
And, he could have thought that they were sleeping with black men. I mean, that's a whole thing, too. I think that he even was mentioned at one point during either an interview or some thoughts that were given by law enforcement. Here's the thing, though. At the time... And on top of it, this is the big thing. Franklin could be placed in this area at the time of these murders, where his other murders he actually admitted to doing, he put himself in the near area of where Nancy and Vicky were found, based on those timelines. However, Franklin later denied any involvement and refused to speak to anyone regarding the Rainbow murders. So it was like a cat and mouse game almost, where he'd be like, no, come talk to me. I'll tell you about what I know. And then as soon as they get there, he's like, I'm not talking to you. I'm not telling you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to deal with you. So he never claimed that he did it, but it was so coincidental, quote unquote, that it almost makes too much sense if that's a thing. However, at the trial of Jacob Beard, the judge denied the confession, deeming it too unreliable and blocked it from being entered into evidence.
Well, it's like we talked about in the Killing Fields. The reason the guy's confession to killing the girls wasn't accepted because you have to prove it.
Right. That's a whole, I mean, it is true. You have to be able to corroborate it. You have to be able to bring a witness and for them to state this is what happened.
Yeah.
And if he gets on the stand and he's like, I never said that. I was just wanted attention. I just wanted somebody to come talk to me. I wanted to be this badass. I didn't actually do it. I mean,
because if he had allowed this, that means anybody who murders, they could always have somebody be like, hey, actually, I did it.
Right.
Oh, wait, no, I didn't. But you've got on record that I said I did. So
right.
You got to, yeah, it's a tricky slope.
Well, and it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And an unreliable confession creates reasonable doubt where there should not be reasonable doubt, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in this day and age, anybody looks for an excuse to find where they can believe that somebody didn't do it. So this is another example of it. So on June 4th, 1993, a jury convicted Beard in the killings of the two women and sentenced him to life without parole. However, after appealing the conviction and presenting Franklin's confession, along with new eyewitness testimony solidifying Beard's alibi for the day in question, the case was remanded back from the Court of Appeals to a new trial. So on May 31st in 2000, a second trial was held. Same prosecutor, same everything. Now, here's the thing that I want to bring up. It was the same sheriff and the same prosecutor who followed this entire case. So even that second trial, 20 years later, it's the same prosecutor. However, a jury ended up acquitting him based on all of that new information.
7 years later. Oh, 20 years from the killing.
20 years from the killings. Like the investigation to that last trial.
Yeah. Well, you've got a lot of explaining to do. People aren't as accepting of shady shit.
Right.
At this time.
But, and if you read the book itself, you kind of understand where like the prosecutor and the sheriff is coming from because they were so sure it was him. And if you read the book, it goes a little bit more into how Jacob Beard is as a person. Like he is not a good person whatsoever. He's an alcoholic. He treats his family like shit. There's rumors that he killed his his girlfriend's cat at one point, like just to be an asshole. So, there's a lot of there that would be consistent with somebody who might have just done it.
Plus, he called the family. Like, why would you do that?
And that's a big thing too. Is like, why would you? On the flip side, why would you do that?
Or maybe he was there and saw this guy do it.
Yeah.
Or maybe he helped him, or we just don't know.
We don't know. So what really strikes me about this case is the details in the murders themselves are not important. Like, it's a very straightforward murder. 2 women shot, point blank, that's it.
No evidence.
No evidence, no witness statements, nothing until the investigation really kicks off later. It's a very bare case to begin with. And this case to me is really more about the fact of how the investigators zeroed on this idea that it could have only been someone local who murdered these women. The idea that it was just some random what happened, one drive by and done or something. It was never in their minds. They thought it was a local because of where these bodies were located. And like I said before, there are a lot of holes in Jacob Beard's story. Like, why would you call a family if you didn't have some sort of guilty conscience thing? It's like, who thought of that? Like, you had to go, like, it's 1982. It's not like you can go on Google, pull up a number or Facebook and like send them a message and be like, my condolences. You had to do some effort to find these numbers. But it also calls into question whether zeroing in on him was really caused the downfall of any further investigation. That's sort of my thought process on it. With his acquittal and no other suspect being brought to trial, at this point, the case is technically unsolved. So there are theories as to whether it was him or it wasn't him. And maybe it was him, but once you're acquitted, that's it. That's the end. So that was one unsolved case. So then I was doing research on this case. I thought, wasn't there a case me and you had talked about?
Yeah. I talk about this a lot, so I actually said it to you here. What about that one?
Yeah, and that's where it kind of popped back in my brain. I'm like, this is kind of similar in the sense that it's a very strange case. Two girls just kind of hiking, hitchhiking, whatever you want to call it.
They were just hiking.
Yeah.
They were just walking through woods that a lot of people go into.
Yeah.
Snapchatting. Here's the thing. This is the age of social media. They were Snapchatting.
Yeah.
And FaceTiming and had pictures of the guy who killed them.
So let's get into these murders exactly. So this is what are deemed the Delphi murders because it happened in Delphi, Indiana in 2017. So on February 14th, 2017, the bodies of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, who she goes by Libby, were discovered near Monon High Bridge Trail, which is a part of the Delphi Historic Trails in Delphi, Indiana. The girls had disappeared from the trails the previous day. In the afternoon of February 13th, 2017, the girls were dropped off by Libby's older sister at a trailhead where they would last be seen on the Monon High Bridge over Deer Creek. So this is like just a bunch of different hiking trails you can take.
Yeah, these girls were pretty young. They were 13.
I think they were 14. I think both of them were 14, about to be 15. So they had been dropped off by Libby's older sister. I think they were just going out to hike for a couple hours, and that would be really it. Here's where it starts getting weird. So these girls were dropped off at about 1 o'clock-ish, 1 p.m. for this walk. They were supposed to meet their family at about 5:30. At 2:07, which is now dubbed the 2:07 Snapchat picture, there's a picture taken by Libby, which is posted on Snapchat showing Abigail walking on this bridge with what appears to be a figure off in the distance following the girls. So that was the first thing that was really strange about it, is you can see what looks like somebody kind of way off in the distance. You wouldn't have noticed it first unless you knew these girls were disappeared, where they're just following it. And now this specific place where they were walking is actually an abandoned hiking trail. They weren't on the actual trail that is regularly used by people who use that trail. So the fact that they were on a very obscure trail to begin with was kind of sus to begin with.
Well, especially when you see the pictures they took, it looks like they were trying to get away from somebody later on. So these weren't Snapchat. They were Snapchat. They were like voice recordings and pictures that they had taken, and you get the idea that they had left the main trail trying to get away from someone.
Yeah. So a few hours later, the pair would be reported missing from their family when they failed to meet at the end of the trail. So I think the entire hiking trip itself took about 4 hours. However, initially, authorities did not suspect foul play in their disappearance because, they were on an abandoned trail.
Yeah.
And so they thought maybe they had gotten off the trail and they got lost, so they started looking. However, after a few hours of looking, it would later change the next day when the bodies would be found around noon the next day near the bridge itself. So if you look at where they were last kind of Snapchatted at, they were probably like half a mile away from where they were when that first picture came out. So it's pretty close in time, they think, to that first picture happening that this whole incident regarding whatever happens to them occurs. It's like you're kind of watching a horror movie. Like within 20 minutes, they're dead. It's really creepy. So the first weird part about this case is the fact that the authorities have never released information surrounding the cause of death. And there's really little information regarding any physical evidence in this case, despite the families doing their best to keep the crimes in the public as a way to solve it.
Oh, I thought we did get details of the death release. It was horrible.
No, they never. No. I looked all over. I've tried to find any information. They've never released any information about their cause of death. Now, it's possible that there's speculation as to how their death was, if it's so traumatizing or somebody might have known somebody who knew somebody. But there's never been an official release as to what happened. There's never been any confirmation as to whether DNA evidence was located on the scene that tied it to anybody. However, on the flip side, it kind of makes sense why law enforcement didn't do this. So when asked about it, why there was so little official information on the case released to the public, an Indiana State Police Sergeant told A&E True Crime that it is standard protocol to keep details mum during an ongoing investigation. Their theory is that something a suspect would say during the investigation would lead them right to the right person if the details were not released and that person stated something that was not publicly known. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
No, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you're looking at specific people, if you let's think about it. We have these high publicity murders. There are always people who are looking to get famous, regardless of the fact whether it's twisted. Like that guy who said he murdered JonBenet Ramsey.
Yeah.
Of course you have those details. Those details are all over the internet, anywhere you can find it. But you don't want to end up not convicting the right person just because some twisted individual wants to say he's the one that murdered her. It's just my thing is though, why would you want to ever have that claim to fame that, hey, I murdered this person?
Attention. Some people are nuts for attention.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
That's super creepy. However, what has really perpetrated the interest in this case was the fact that Libby had recorded a voice of an unknown man and what sounds like him saying telling the girls to go down the hill. So Libby, there's a lot of articles if you read about this murder case, where they really do thank Libby, even though she's not here anymore, that part of the reason why they even have evidence as to what happened is because she was smart enough to pull out her phone, take pictures, record it, just so they have something, because otherwise this would be an unsolved case. It wasn't like you can place anybody there at the time of the murders. They were in the middle of the woods just walking on an abandoned bridge.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's crazy. Along with that, there was a photo of capture of what appeared to be an individual wearing what was a hat, a blue jacket, and jeans walking on the bridge, which is apparently, like I said, abandoned and not used regularly.
And he is like right fucking behind them.
Yeah.
Like I would say within 15 feet. He's not far behind them on the bridge. And so they're saying like right after she took that picture is probably when she did the voice recording where he's telling them, go down the hill.
Yeah.
And the thing about this guy is he looks like he could live like just down the country road in your own neighborhood. He didn't look scary. He didn't look evil, but
it looked like somebody who was just hiking, like somebody else who could have just been out.
I mean, what an evil bastard.
Now, I was doing some research on this, and there is very little information that I'm going to give you that is very different than what's out there. But I was listening to another podcast about this, and they were talking about that one of the theories they had is that this guy was pictured in the blue jeans and the blue jacket was actually one of the girls' grandfather, and it was coming to meet them. And the thing with that theory is, A, why would they have been trying to run away from him? Seems a little sus. B, why would the grandfather not say, hey, I was out there looking for them. I saw them. I checked on them and then I left or something like that. Or C, is he the murderer? So it's a weird theory.
Well, you kind of have to think that, yes, he is because nobody else was out there.
Right.
It was just them. And he gets closer and closer. He starts off in that first Snapchat. And it is the same individual, and he's pretty good bit away. Yeah. And then he's closer and closer, which, let's think about the age difference there. You're talking about a grandpa and some young girls, and they're trying to get away from him. Yeah. Because she's consistently taking pictures. Yeah. And there's some really random pictures, like she takes pictures of something on the ground. Like she's leaving breadcrumbs that we just can't understand and find.
Right. She did her best. And I mean, if you're in that situation, you're in the middle of nowhere, nobody's going to be able to rescue you. I mean, think about it. You're in the middle of nowhere and you're on an abandoned trail. There's nobody coming.
And you can kind of see in her face that I think she's aware. Like, her friend is oblivious. Yeah. Like, her friend's smiling and, la-di-dying. But when it shows her, she's got this look in her face. And this is what hit home to me. She knows.
Yeah. She knows it's the end. Yeah. I mean, and that's a lot of wherewithal and forethought for a 14-year-old to have. Because most of the time, they think they're invincible. There's nobody who's going to kill them. But if you also look online, you can find a sketch of the original picture from that, or a sketch of an individual they depicted from that picture. If you can go look on YouTube and all of that stuff. And it's really eerie knowing the outcome of it. However, recently the Indiana State Police have released the audio recordings of what they believe, and this was in 2019, of what they believe to be the suspect on the bridge with the girls that day, along with the updated sketch of the person of interest. Law enforcement also stated that the individual is hiding in plain sight and has possibly been interviewed already, or it's somebody close to that person. So they think they know who it is, but I think they're still working on investigating it.
I really wish you could pull people in for a lineup saying, put these clothes on and stand in this position. Yeah. Because, I mean, we can see him.
Yeah. But the thing is with that is you have to still have a witness identify them. It can't just be the jury saying, oh, that looks exactly like that guy. It has to be somebody else who actually saw him and say, that's that guy. Yeah. So it's really interesting being on the side of criminal law, seeing exactly how it works and trying to explain it to people, because everybody thinks it's like, oh man, it looks exactly like that guy, but it's like, that's not admissible.
Yeah, because there's people who look like me all over the place.
Right. Well, I mean, wearing certain clothes and wearing like a hat.
When I lived in Canada, I was mistaken for some homewrecker woman and almost attacked in a grocery store.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and I'm from Georgia. And I hadn't even been in Canada 2 weeks at that point. And she cussed me out, and a lot of people in that town mistook me for this other woman. I never met her, but I would get called her name a lot.
What if it was your doppelganger?
It had to be, because apparently, according to the people who mistook me, I look just like her.
Well, I get a lot of people who say, I think I saw you driving the other day, and it's like in a car that looks similar to yours. I'm like, but it wasn't me, because I was like literally at work.
Where are you now, Becky? I need to talk to these people.
Well, but it's still scary. It's like, can you think about, like, what if, like, the glitch in the Matrix is happening and it is me?
Oh, and with makeup, though, like, I could probably... We've seen people, like cosplayers, make themselves look exactly like somebody else.
Yeah. It's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, just a little, like, contour and highlight can make the difference. I mean, you think about it. When you see these, like, girls on streams and they don't have makeup on, you're like, don't look like yourself. Just go.
Or those reaction videos to the Asian women who can make themselves look like just a completely different person.
Yeah.
And then they take their stuff off and you're like, holy crap.
Holy shit.
You don't look like an anime grill anymore.
Yeah, how can you make that happen? You look like normal grill. All right, so with the video, or with the pictures, I say video because I was watching it on a YouTube video, but you can Google it. They'll show all the pictures. The lack of details on the longevity of the case being open has led to over 1,000 people being interviewed for the case. I think they were even reaching like 10,000 as a possible number of people who've been like interviewed. Law enforcement has stated that about 10 to 12 tips at minimum coming in daily about this case. There are websites dedicated to the theories, speculations, and suspicions of the case, which have garnered a lot of false information about the investigation, too. Apparently, there's an entire subreddit dedicated to this case.
Okay, yeah, and on the subreddit, because I was just thinking, I know I read details about this.
Yeah.
Like, grisly details. The reason the law enforcement is so devoted to this case is because I want to say it from... and. Honestly, we can't confirm the details that's released and stuff, but if you've ever seen Last House on the Left, it's a lot like what happened there.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it was awful. Just absolutely horrific murder. And that's why they're so dedicated to solving this. I really do feel like, I don't know if it's on the dark web or somewhere else, I've seen details.
And it's possible. I mean, the thing is, even with the most mum of people, there are still going to be details that get released that aren't supposed to be available to the public. It just happens.
Yeah, and the family does. Every time they find something out, they release it because they want to find it. And their thoughts are, the more people know. But you could be hindering the investigation, because now we know that they were killed. One of them was killed in water, and one was killed on the shore. And we know a lot more than we should. So now, like, you're muddy in the waters, like, literally.
Yeah. I mean, for me, other than what I looked up that was officially released by law enforcement, that's all I have in this, because I don't want to start putting speculation on things, which it's fine for our podcast if we just put that header that this is all speculation.
Right.
But this is also supposed to be informative as to what people know about it right now. I mean, the speculation could be true. I mean, and the details that have not been released could be true, but if they are still investigating it, I don't want to perpetuate the idea that this could be true, and then it turns out not to be true. But I get it. Like, there are probably a lot of true theories and a lot of things that happen that are all over the internet. So if you want to find that, go crazy on it. But I just hate that this is just it's been 3 years now. It's been actually last month would have been a 3-year anniversary of it. Yeah, because we're in March at this point. And like I said, so it is an unsolved case, but law enforcement is highly dedicated to solving this murder. It's not considered a cold case whatsoever. And the investigations continue to be ongoing. So, I hope one day they solve it. I hope one day we get the full details of what happened. Not because I'm a morbid person, but I feel like it's such a disservice to what these girls went through and what they tried to do to help solve. I mean, Libby already knew she was going to die. That's the only thing I can think. When somebody is that quick on their feet to think, I need to take a picture, I need to take a recording, because if something happens, like.
And one of the pictures she took was, it was darker out.
Yeah.
So we're thinking maybe she took the picture while, he had them.
Yeah.
And it was just a strange picture.
Yeah. I mean, it's a question that I would love to know the answer to this. There are so many we could have done a full podcast on just unsolved murders, but I thought it was good to do some that were kind of not as highly publicized as like Jack the Ripper or the Black Dahlia, but these ones that people have heard about, but maybe update as well. Because, I mean, it's been 3 years on the Delphi
especially
ones.
because this one's just, 2017.
2017. And think about it. The details in this case, they almost nearly remind me of the Rainbow Girl murders. Just because it's like abandoned place, girls killed off, very little detail as to what happened. And I mean, for the Delphi murders, they probably have a lot more detail. It's just little information and the public just doesn't know what happened. But yeah, historic, I mean, like a public park like that, you would...
And the family, sister drops them off. The family's waiting at the other end. Because if I remember correctly, they just wanted to hike a different trail.
Yeah.
Like the whole family was out.
Yeah.
And, at that age, you're like, okay, just stay on this trail. We'll meet you at the end. We all meet up here. And you just don't think. I do.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about this shit.
Well, you also have to think about it from maybe that this is something that they've done a million times. Like... Go hiking. We'll see you in a couple hours. Keep your cell phone on you. Call us if you need us. Period. The end. It's not what I think strikes me so much is that this case, the 2017 case of the Delphi murders, there's technology. There were ways to maybe call for help, but they still couldn't do it.
Right, because she'd Snapchatted, and that was, I think they were out of service at that point. That's why she resorted to taking pictures and voice recording. Which is really unfortunate that they walked the wrong way.
Yeah. So.
But I just want to put out there again, people, even though you've done something 100 times, multiple times, doesn't mean it's safe.
No.
You always have to have a plan of action, regardless of what you're doing. If I go into the backyard, I've got a plan of action.
Well, and it is a striking contrast because and I actually no, it's kind of similar. Think about in 1980, they were hitchhiking. It was completely normal to hitchhike back in 1980.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what was it? Well, who was it that was the hitchhiker killer? It wasn't Jeffrey Dahmer, but it was...
Ted Bundy?
Maybe it was Ted Bundy I was thinking of.
Ted Bundy picked up a lot of hitchhikers.
Yeah, like that was just such a unique perspective, but people hitchhiked all over the place. It was normal. So there was no concern that you might not be safe because everybody was safe. Kind of like how these girls were just walking on a probably a trail they've hiked a million times. It just wasn't safe that day.
Yeah. It just happened to be the day that some evil bastard was out there.
Thanks, evil bastards of the world.
There is a lot of, but like Becky said, there's a lot of research out there, but you really have to go looking into it because any of the official stuff isn't out there.
Right. Because these are all speculation and theories that could only be given on what they know. Like, and I mean, think about it. This is such a unique case. People get, I hate to say this, but people do get murdered all the time and they go unsolved. I mean, if you got a drive-by shooting, sometimes you're not going to be able to solve it ever.
Well, there's the kid that was murdered, just literally less than a mile up the road from me. Never been solved.
Solved.
There's been, 4 kids now?
Yeah.
Murdered within a 2-mile radius of me. I'm not the killer, I promise. But they're not solved.
No. But the scary part is it's like, I think what makes this case unique is that the girls did try to solve their own murder. Like, I don't think we would have had any publicity on it really around the nation if it wasn't for the fact that there was actual digital evidence that could be shown to everybody. So, I don't know. Wow, I've made myself depressed with this episode.
Yeah. Because I mean, these girls, when you see their Snapchats they were posting, they're just sweet-cheeked, innocent girls.
Yeah. This is what I've learned, is that the coronavirus is just trying to keep us safe.
Just trying to keep us inside.
Keep us inside. You're safe at home.
No, remember the Baton Rouge killer would go in your house and kill you.
Oh, that's true. Oh, I guess that's true too.
Yeah.
And but you know what? A lot of dropping burglaries. Can't really be doing your job if everybody's home. Just saying. Okay, well that was okay. Well, I'm kind of sad now. Hey, I need you to yeah. Hey, Angie, where can they find us? I'm not having people yell at me.
You can find us on a previous episode where Becky lists everything.
And you can find us on Facebook at The Free Rotation Podcast.
You can find us on Spotify.
You can find us on Twitter at
The Free Rotation.
It's Free Rotation, yeah.
Free Rotation.
I got confused with Instagram. What's Instagram's?
The Free Rotation Podcast.
Okay. What about YouTube and Twitch?
The Free Rotation.
What's our website name?
The Free Rotation. No. Yeah, The Free Rotation Podcast.com. TheFreeRotation.com.
TheFreeRotation.com, yeah. And what are we affiliates of?
We Be Geeks.
Oh, what can we check out other great podcasts there?
Yes.
Okay. Yay!
Yay!
I had a lot of fun though. It was just me and you.
Are we going to go kill people now?
Yeah.
No.
No.
We're going to go get murdered.
No. We're going to go get my Explorer's Guide to Wildmount so we can work on D&D characters.
What are we not going to get?
Coronavirus. Or, yeah. Okay, bye, guys.
Bye. Bobby, if you're listening, just call home.
Just call home. As to why he would make these calls. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, you're looking over there like there's a ghost.
I'm fine, Becky.
Okay. Okay.